Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And again, me, Chantelle, your hostess, definitely with the mostest, for sure. You see, I don't even have to bring Jamie on. You're right there next to me. And I'm so happy that we're definitely not gonna have interferences again, Jamie. Last time I felt horrific, I have to say. I couldn't hear anything you were saying. I felt like a chump sitting there not being able to engage with you, but I'm very happy that I know the viewers heard you. So welcome back. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, it's a little early in the morning for me. But yeah, I'm happy to be here and I just want to do a better job than we kind of had to do last time. So we'll try to
Listen, I
make a
think
better
you
one.
were,
And thanks to the viewers for sticking out that last one. And hopefully this one's a little bit better.
no, you were fantastic. It was my internet. I mean, anyway, we were actually just saying off air, there's weird things going on with this internet lately for sure, but we are going to plod through and we do not let anything stop us. So here we go. And Jamie, today we're on another topic. And guys, as you all, well, no, you don't know, obviously. Let me just reintroduce Jamie for those of you who have not met her before. But I want to highly suggest that if you haven't watched Jamie's first interview, that you do. She's a brilliant researcher on anything MK Ultra, mind control, and worked with a lot of survivors in her time, and really just does brilliant work helping us understand how this stuff works. And an avid reader, I mean, you're a brilliant reader and researcher on this topic as well. There's really nothing you don't know. So today we're going to be talking about MK Ultra mind control, and of course, BDSM, um, topics like that that extend into extreme sexual practices that have definitely involved mind control, torture with kids, that sort of stuff. I did an interview with Chris Latera a couple of weeks back on BDSM. He was involved. Obviously, if you guys haven't watched any of his interviews, again, I want to highly encourage that you do because a Montauk survivor as well. And of course, as we know, these Montauk survivors, not only the Montauk survivors, go through a lot. And part of the dissociation, right, through the pain of their torture, they would then leave the body. And I do believe that a lot of these extreme sexual practices are all related to that. And he has spoken about the fact that he was actually a master and his partner at the time was a sub. Um, and that was in itself very complicated for him because one would think that as a master, you kind of call the shots, but at the end of the day, it's not really, he's got to do his thing, which is very restricting for him as well. So both of them are actually restricted, I would imagine, in the practice. But anyway, I would love to hear what you have to say, Jamie. Over to you.
Sorry, there's so much. I'm going to try and funnel it down into
I
something that
know,
makes
I
sense.
know.
So yeah, so there's the psychological side of this, and then there's kind of a political side of this, is the way I kind of look at it. And so we can kind of go back to the psychological stuff and discuss later, but I mean, people are basically trying to control their own altered states of consciousness and to reenact things in a way that has control. And so this will connect to psychological concepts such as somatic reenactment, the Freudian repetition compulsion, like going into altered states, this kind of stuff. But it's really about reenactment with control, and then also connecting that to post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very common for people to want to go and do things that make them feel alive by reenacting something that brings them to a brink, because they have a kind of a dead end state
Right.
normally in their nervous system. So, and we'll kind of go back to that. But for the political side, it's like it's true what Chris is saying about it, at some point it gets exhausting to be a master, and like this is the whole point of MK Ultra, is that they want to train their slaves to anticipate the need of the master before the master has to give orders. Because if you're always having to micromanage to give orders, it's actually like a burden to take upon yourself to caretake for somebody that much. So you actually become a slave yourself in the master role And I always
Right.
say it's an actual slave system. So there's no such thing as just a master. You have a master slave dynamic, and then that master is a slave to somebody else or something else. And so it's just a hierarchy of master slave that is in a slave system. And so
Exactly.
personally, I think the goal of humanity is to get off of the master slave dynamic in this whole dimension, because I think we're actually all in an S&M dimension right now, which has to do with free will, autonomy, and slave master relationships, which we're really being tested on globally right now with all of the stuff that's gone over the last couple of years. It really is a game of S&M. And so it's like empowering people to understand that there's a way to get out of that dynamic instead of just flipping the roles on it, because you're constantly staying in that dynamic, which is ultimately what they want. Is that a good kind of start? I'll let you speak for a bit on that. But
Absolutely. It makes such perfect sense, you know. Um, I think if we understand one of the laws of the universe, it's the law of extremes, right? And one thing I've understood about how these creatures of the night operate is, hey, they're very clever. They know the laws of the universe very, very well. And unfortunately, they will use them to the extreme of the dark, which is what they choose to do. So if we just think of these kids and what they've gone through, um, many of them, torture begins in the womb, right? And it changes literally the cellular shape of your cell. So when that cell duplicates itself, it's very different. It looks very different to the natural way that our body is meant to be and our minds are meant to react and respond to things. So already just through the torture, it's a very different energy you're working with. So I can imagine that, as you say, this whole thing, the master slave, being controlled, being told, being tortured, waterboarded, raped, beaten, punished, terrorized, until you literally, it's the extreme, and then you leave your body. And dissociation, and it's almost like that dissociation it must be like a gigantic, and I'm not talking about a sexual orgasm, but such relief from the pain that it's like bliss when you're out there. And in my mind, that is what the kids who are now adults, right? Um, and that wound has not been healed, would strive for in that whole BDSM type scenario where, of course, you hurt, there's a lot of pain inflicted. But as I said, you know, they understand each other's wounds. So there's a respect, actually, if it's done properly, not with some psychopath, obviously. Um, there's a respect there. So I think I can understand the way that that works. But it's exactly as you say, it's that master, slave, slave, master. And I think that is such a great picture that paints the way our society is right now, right? We are slaves. We are submissive in some areas. In some areas, we're the master slave. It's a cycle. It's like the victim, villain, villain, victim. Who's the victim? Who's the villain? Sometimes depends who you're speaking to, right? Master, slave, slave, master. So it absolutely is that cycle that we've got to get out of. And they've known how to push the human mind, the human psyche, the human emotions, the human body to such an extreme that that's kind of what they crave. It becomes an addiction, right, Jaymee? What do you say? I think that becomes like an addiction.
absolutely. And it's always seeking a balance. So when you swing the pendulum out one way, it wants to swing back the other way to balance it out. That's like always happening in nature. And the best way to make people who will enslave others is to abuse them. And so like I used to be in the military, and you know, it's all in a rank structure, right? So as soon as you get to one rank, you're in charge of people below you, so you can treat them like crap, but you're getting treated like crap from the person above. But what I found interesting is like, even after people just got off basic training and they're just like one little peg up from somebody who, you know what I mean? Like they're just one little tiny peg up, they'd have like a complete personality change and just want to be abusive to the person beneath them because they had taken so much abuse through the basic training that as soon as there was kind of an outlet for them to vent it down. And if you look at the people that are the enslavers of humanity, which is the order followers and the people who will use violence against others, like on others' orders, like police officers and stuff, they're not free. Like they take orders, they stand at attention, they are slaves, but they're willing to go and enslave others. And so that's what they want to do is build up that you know, trauma in you so that you're just looking for a person where they say put it there, they give you the orders, and then you're going to go and do it on somebody else. So like that's part of the training is to make slave masters is they have to be a slave first. And a lot of the people that are enslaving other people on the planet, they're willing slave themselves. Like they've signed up for this stuff. They have no problem being a hierarchy of being order following and not using their own free will. That's totally been normalized to them. So that's why they're willing to go and make everybody else do it as well. Like they're willing to do it themselves. They're not free. And I always say these like people like, you know, Hillary Clinton and stuff, like they're not free. They're more enslaved than us. Like these people way up in the hierarchy that seem like they're the top slave masters, like they are the most enslaved. Like they are the least free people. You know what I mean? They're just up on the slave hierarchy. Health counselor, and if somebody came to me for counseling and they told me that somebody was tell them what they could think or what they could feel or what kind of things they could watch or read or what they could say, I would identify that as a domestic violence situation. And if I was giving somebody advice and they were in a domestic violence situation, I would never recommend to them that they start complying with their abuser, because for an abuser, compliance is a drug for them. And when you start complying with an abuser, you're entering into a sadomasochistic relationship. And right now, with our government and the type of laws that they're writing, trying to regulate our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions and our beliefs and our opinions and our soul expression that we express through our speech, we are in a sadomasochistic relationship. And a lot of people think in a sadomasochistic relationship that the dominatrix is the one with all the control. But that's an illusion, because the dominatrix will only dominate you as much as you submit. The submissive person is the one with the safe word, who is the person who controls how much they will be dominated and how much abuse they will tolerate. And so I just want to say, I don't care what laws the government writes against what I can think, what I can feel, what I can read, what I can watch, and what I can love and what I can hate. I do not consent. My safe word is no. I do not agree. Woo! Jaymee!
Totally. It's exactly, it's a total system of enslavement. And it's a bondage that they can't get out of. It goes round and round and round. It's like living in this beautiful gilded palace, right? But you can only live there for a certain time, and there's X amount of rooms or whatever it might be. But soon you get tired of all the activities there because you've been doing it forever, right? And now you want more, you crave more, you crave more, that's nature, it's human nature. So when there's nothing more in you, like, or around you rather, to go and explore or whatever, you're now going to go and try. And it's like rich kids, right? They've had everything, and that's why you're often going to find they go to drugs and crazy things like that because they've had it all, you know. And I think this is what happens. So you've now had every bit of negativity or depravity you can, and now you've just got to make it worse and worse and worse. And if you look at, like, it's true what you're saying, the way the hierarchy treats, and I mean the child hunting, the torture, the abuse, the cannibalism, all of that stuff is what they do. they are enslaving their spirits or their souls in such a way you can never, ever, ever get away from actions like that. So karmically, spiritually, they're enslaved. And they know, the way I see it anyway, they've just got an X amount of time and they're just going to do whatever the heck they can to make it as crazy for everyone else as possible. And everyone's trying to climb up this ladder, trying to be at the top so that we aren't um, enslaved, right? It's so true. It's an entire system of enslavement. And
Well, and I
everyone,
think that's what we're here to learn in this matrix. Like it is a slave map. This is the scenario. Like the evil side is slavery. The good side is freedom and love. Like those are the sides of the coin. This is the battle.
so when we look at sort of, politics at the moment, the slaves and the slave owners, in my case, it's the colonizers. I'm a colonizer, right? So we're the colonizers and, well, the colonizers, yeah. Um, there's that whole narrative all the time about the slaves and the masters and the slaves. And it doesn't just, as you say, stop there. It now moves into sexual acts. And those sexual acts, when you're looking at the dom and the sub, right? I mean, it doesn't just happen for an hour on a Saturday night. It happens throughout their lives. And that's what Chris was saying. You know, he had to give her a schedule. He had to make sure that she was entertained. He had to make sure that otherwise the slave gets very rowdy and unhappy and she plays up, you know? So you got to keep her pacified all the time. And that in itself is the bondage, right? So as you were saying, and I love that video, and we're going to pop it up here as well, guys, that you sent me earlier on about that whole living in a sadomasochistic society. So as long as
Yeah.
we are saying yes, it's going to happen. And our safe word is no. I love that, by the way.
Yeah, well, we should play that at the end. It's like I always say, we're always doing S&M. So like go and work at a corporation, like a hierarchical corporation, like where there's supervisors, managers. Like I have never gone and worked anywhere where there's not some S&M going on. Like there are these people and they normally want to be managers, which I never understand because you don't even get paid a lot more to be a manager. The only thing you really get to be a manager is that you get to be in charge of other people. Like most kind of low level managers don't actually get paid quite a bit more for having to be controlling everybody else. Like, and so I always think, why would somebody want to do that job? Like, what would be the payoff for them? And it's a psychic payoff where they get to be in control of others. And
Right.
to me, I always see it as a burden, but like, I mean, I just, anybody watching, like go and think about the place that you work and there's always S&M being reenacted. They're always pushing your limits, seeing how far they can exert their power over you and where you're going to say no. And like, it's just this, it's like a subtle mind game that's going on in every type of corporation where people are kind of like, feel like they need that job, right? So then they'll start pushing to see how much you'll take. And at some point people just quit. But like, there's always that game being played. It's always a game of S&M. I swear I've seen it every single place. It's not just really obvious hierarchical structures like the military. It's really anywhere. Um, so having said that, like, so I think we're in a dimension where we're in a giant S&M game. And so I think the whole point is to get off the board and out of the game and get up above that game, because that dynamic can just keep repeating through karma, through everything. Like it never ends, right? It's always what, like you're a slave up and a master down. And it's like we need to get off of this and stop replaying this dynamic, because it's just keeping everybody stuck in a slave system, which I believe is satanic and evil, and like it's a hierarchical system. And I think all these systems on the earth are a reflection of these demonic realms. And so I think the more that they keep us in there, even thinking you're going to be up in a master, they're still keeping you in that structure. And I think it's getting away from that structure. Personally, I'm an anarchist, so like I don't believe in like legitimacy of any governments, or like I think people should just understand morality and act from a moral decode, which doesn't require a master-slave relationship. It requires self-responsibility, self-autonomy, like but again, it's the most moral way to be. And people that word anarchism, they think it means no laws, and it's like, no, it's absolutely respecting law without force. And the law is natural law of respecting other people's rights to not be harmed, right? And so I think a lot of what people are playing out in these games is kind of a swayed out imitation of this. But I always think like it's to get out of that game. And that like people might be surprised that that's my opinion on this, but like again, I think I completely support everybody's right to make their own decision as an anarchist. Like free will and having autonomy is number one to me, and that is outside of a slave system, right? And so if people choose to go and play these games and they're consenting adults, then like I don't think anybody else has the right to even like tell anybody what to do. They're allowed to go and do that. But I think there's also a line, and I'm not sure what the line is, but I'll ask this question to the audience. Because I think about, you know, another part of the game we're in is service to self or service to others. And that doesn't mean losing yourself to a mob mentality to serve the group, like in some communism or like mob mentality. I think it is a balance. But sometimes I think things like, you know, self-defense is more of a duty than even a right, because it's like, well, if you're going to allow yourself to be abused and allow yourself and be a willing slave, it kind of brings down the whole standard for the group, right? And so when you think about something that I've been thinking a lot, because I got kind of disturbed when somebody told me about Bonnie Blue, is I started to really think about all this, you know? I don't know if you know who Bonnie Blue is, but she did like the largest gangbang of all time, like ever. And
Was
so
this the girl on YouTube not too long ago? 1,000 guys in a day or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
The same
And
one,
yeah,
yes.
so I was really disturbed by that because I 100 believe that's MK Ultra. And so I see her, like, I absolutely believe that is, I think a lot of pornography is MK Ultra. So then again, it's not that free will thing. I think a lot of it appears to be free will when it's not. But when you think about something like that, you're like, okay, well, it's their body. They have a right to do what they want. It's free will. It's consent. It, like, if she wants to do that, nobody has the right to say she can or can't because they don't own her or her body, right? But when she does that, what's the effect of it on all
Right.
women or all humanity, right? Or like there is an effect. And for herself, she received a large payout for that. But it had an effect on many, many other people in the group. So, you know, it's like, where's the line on this stuff? Is it like
Right.
absolute free will, like to the point where you can be the most willing slave? And there's people like that. There's people who want to be eaten by cannibals online. And you're like, okay, well, if they want to, it's their body. But then at some point, you're like, how far does this go before you're kind of morally obligated to at least respect yourself to a level of not harming yourself? Like, and I don't have the exact answer to that. I just think it's something we could all think about. And we're kind of being asked to think about it with these extreme scenarios being out in front of us.
It's so true. You know, what you're saying there, you know, morally, do we have a moral obligation to society, humanity, to, I mean, if I see someone beating a child or an animal, you rest assured I'm going to get involved for sure. I'm going to stop it if I can and certainly say something, most definitely. But as you say, these are consenting adults. So how does one, at what point, change that? But I will stick to what I feel anyway, and from what you're saying, it's pretty similar to what you feel. I'm a sovereign being. I have a mind of my own. My mom knew at the age of 4 she could not smack my ass, because if she did, I just went and did exactly the same until she stopped smacking me. Smacking me was not, and that's what I taught her. I taught her to smack a child is not working. I taught her to speak to me, to communicate with me, and tell her if there was something wrong, ask me, or whatever, you know, that we could. And that, I think, is paramount for humanity's evolution. But, you know, then it says, well, do you not smack a child? How you, because it all begins with our kids,
Mhm.
right? It all begins as kids. And I have a very, I mean, I think we as parents have to find that middle ground where we can speak with our kids, allow them the space to speak with us so that they don't feel the need to run off somewhere else. I'm one of those fortunate kids. I'm a rebel, was a rebel, but it was more I hated authority. Don't tell me
Mhm.
what to do. And I was at boarding school, I was ruled by bells. But I loved my parents. I trusted them. I knew I was safe. I knew that whatever happened, they would be there. I had that knowledge in me. And that's why I kind of went through life knowing my parents are there. That if anything happens, they are there. And they always proved that to me. Now, the most of the world doesn't have that. And that is why we run around doing extreme things, in my opinion, right? We're looking for love in the wrong places. We're looking for affection. We're looking for excitement, all of this stuff in the wrong places. And unfortunately, Jaymee, I don't know what you say about that. It's like when we're looking at the amount of mind control and people waking up and sleepers, and we're hearing survivor testimonies, wow, that go on. I mean, what is your take? I mean, you work a lot with people like, coming out of traumatic situations and seeing the world in the direction it's going. What is your take about what you see and
Well,
can be the
sorry.
change?
I think I think there's been an attempt. So like I feel like I'm probably going to agree with most people that like I think there's been a real attempt to normalize BDSM because it is a satanic like master slave power hierarchy, right?
Totally.
Whereas God's kingdom is love and freedom and free will, and it's not an exchange of power, and it's not transactional. It's like it's different, right? And even people that
Totally.
serve, it's a free will choice to serve willingly, like it's not forced on anybody, right? And so that's kind of the difference. And I think there's been a real agenda to normalize power and control structures through um, like replication. And so I think a lot of people perceive that to be a healing of trauma. And I disagree on that because I don't think that normalizing something to the point where it's no longer traumatic is the same as healing, because like people can do that even in MK Ultra. Like they can use things like tapping even, and I'm not against tapping. I think there's a place for tapping, but I'm just as an example, somebody can just tap out their trauma so they don't have the emotional charge. But then that could be used in a way where you're just normalizing something that maybe should have an emotional charge, right? And so I think
Right.
with the 50 Shades of Grey and this kind of like really normalizing this sexual inversion, I think it becomes less traumatic because it's been normalized. But I don't think that's ultimately like the best thing for humanity, in my opinion. And I know that's probably not the most like popular opinion. And even people like what they're teaching now in counseling and psychiatry and psychology is like there's counselors recommending, there's even like Christian counselors going and recommending that people go and get involved in BDSM as some type of healing scenario. Yeah, no, I have books like by Christian people working with SRA, like recommending that people that have been like severely sexually abused and that they should go and get involved in BDSM as a form of therapy. And like I personally disagree with that. Again, I respect people's free will, but to me that's just normalizing dysfunction and abuse to the point where
That's,
it's no longer traumatic. So that's how I see it.
that's to me is programming.
Yeah.
That to me is whoever the counselor is telling the client to go and do something extreme that creates more pain and more wounds. That
Yeah.
is reprogramming that person,
Oh
in
yeah.
my opinion. I
Yeah,
mean,
psychology is really dangerous right now.
yeah, it's such a fine line. I actually wanted to ask you about that trauma reenactment
Right.
because I can understand why. a traumatized couple would do that.
Yeah, we're all
I
doing
could
it
def
anyways all the time.
yes, yes. So I could definitely understand that. But do I think that it's healing? No, I don't.
Well, the
I
only thing
think,
that's healing is getting some sense of control.
yeah, I agree in terms of, and also let's say you are the one being abused in the BDSM act. You have the safe word. You have the control to say no. Because as a kid in that traumatic situation, you never had the control.
Right.
Now you have the control, and you know that your partner is going to respect that. That is something that I think is, in my opinion, where the healing could lie. Is that even though you understand there's something not okay in you because of what you've been through, and sex with a partner is just numb unless there's some kind of a extreme something going on. So then you meet a partner who matches that. You get to understand each other. You understand each other's wounds, so you can push each other to that extreme, knowing that you are both safe. That
Right. So it's
for
a type
me,
of
I think,
empathy. It's a type
yes,
of attunement and a type of
right.
empathy. Um, I personally just like, to me, what's become of human sexuality with the pornography and like the extremes and the like the amount of pedophilia and like these snuff, like just the level of the sexual inversion that's happening to humanity and the effect of it on our actual social structures, like with families and relationships, and like how it's actually, it's not just contained to that realm, like it kind of comes out into all of the like the structure of humanity is reflecting those. So personally, like I think something like martial arts could do the same thing, right? Where you have a sensei or somebody that is your master trainer, like, right, and you're going and you're wrestling around or whatever, but you can always say stop, or you're choking too hard or whatever, right? Like there, like that's another version of something like that, where it's maybe a better way to do it, and you're also like doing so like the physical visceral somatic experience of it as well, right? And so like I think there's just other ways. I think that my concern with the BDSM is that, and there's a really good documentary, I think it's just called kink.com, and that was the main pornographic studio for a lot of the BDSM that was coming out. And I think a guy, they said he started in his college room. I think it was called kink.com. Anyways, there's a documentary that was kind of behind the scenes of these people that were actually working in the studio. And they were telling these stories saying like basically all the people that came here to film this porn were really at a really, honestly, at a really bad point in their life. And they'll kind of give this illusion of like this being empowerment and like that they want to do this. But like she said, in reality, like a lot of these people were kind of like at a really dark place in their personal life by the time they ended up coming to this studio. And that was what I found really interesting in this documentary, was kind of the other side of what's behind the camera, right? And the thing about
Right.
BDSM and dissociation is that consent becomes blurred because there is no will without a self. And that's what MK Ultra and SRA is doing, is interfering with your sense of self through dissociative identity disorder, so that you can be a slave because you don't have a will of your own, because you don't have a self of your
Exactly.
own. And so when people start getting into altered states of consciousness, like a subspace or like dissociating, consent starts to become blurred, and consent is incremental. So like just because somebody agrees to one thing, like, okay, I'm going to come and film a scene for this BDSM, but when the activation of the endorphins and stuff starts happening and that person's in a subspace, and three more guys come in the room, and then her brain goes into fight or flight, because on a subconscious level she knows she can't, just like physically knows like that they could make her do whatever with force because of her size. That part of the brain gets activated. Is she really, and she's on camera, is she really in a position to say no when they want to start taking it further? And she's kind of already going to fight or flight, which, you know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of questions that it's like, well, was it really, would that person have been consenting? Did they agree to that beforehand? Or was it incrementally being increased as that person's dissociating, right? So these
Right.
are just some questions that like, I don't think a lot of people think about, right?
I think it's so true because in fact, when I was chatting with Chris about it, we exactly actually spoke about that, and I think that's where they were using him as a handler as well, because that he would get girls coming in to be trained as slaves, basically. But and he spoke about that subspace where it's that addiction to subspace that drives them there, right?
Mm-hmm.
To go through, I guess, the extreme pains until the dissociation occurs, right? And in that dissociated state, they can absolutely, I mean, those call it women. In this case, I would imagine there must be men as well, though. But they become so compliant. You can manipulate them to do exactly what you want. And it's not just, as he was explaining, it's not just something that is there for 10 or 15 minutes. That space can carry on for hours and days and sometimes weeks. So where you're in that dissociative state and they literally can mess with your mind and turn you
It's a
into
programmable state.
totally. And I mean, do you know anything? We was actually saying is that they have slave auctions
Yeah.
of these girls. Did you know anything about that?
Yeah.
Slave auctions. I mean, what do you know about that?
Well, I mean, I know the levels of it where I mean there's obviously I mean if you want to start at the top, there's interdimensional slave trade, there's interplanetary slave trade, there's government slave trade, there's military slave trade, there is the sex industry, there's human trafficking, there's secret cults in the Mormon wife swapping. You know what I mean? Like the slave trade is like this is why I'm telling people this is the game we're in. Like this is what we need to overcome because there's so many levels of it that this
Yeah,
is like what's being acted out. Um,
we're all just slaves, Jamie, and it's so true what you're saying. I mean,
but we're being
yeah,
willing slaves because we've been programmed to believe that our value comes from serving. And the thing is I've studied a lot of child abuse, and the worst abuse in my opinion is neglect because it's like kids would rather have negative attention. A
and no
lot of women
attention.
would rather be in an abusive relationship than be alone. So like even a sadist has to have extreme attunement to the person that they're abusing, even if it's consensual abuse, which I don't even know that exists. But what I'm saying is that attunement of being so desired, even as an object of abuse, is that at least makes a person feel like seen and valued, even you know what I mean. So like, and that's why sometimes when these
Totally.
people try to leave cults or leave even their handlers of MK Ultra, they feel that like that person really wanted control of them, and so it's kind of a control of the slave to be desired. And I think because of the way that things have gone with the pornography and stuff, like it's like being a regular girl next door is just not exciting enough anymore, right? So you see these extreme things where it's back in the day men used to pursue women, and now because of the way that dating culture apps and pornography has made it where men are just flipping through women being like who's going to entertain me the most, women rather than say we're not going to lower ourselves down to the standard, they actually start competing. And sometimes I call it like the potty pageants where they're literally like pick me, like you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's to a point of being like Bonnie Blue where you're like hey I did like 500 gangbangs not enough, I did 1,000. Like it's like it just keeps going to this more extreme, more extreme, more extreme, to be
so
basically
true.
and then also we are programmed to be considered good if we're good slaves, and that goes to the school system too. Even your own parents, oh you're a good boy or girl because you did what mom or dad said, that makes you good, right? Like compliance is good, that's where your value comes from, compliance. So we're all programmed all the time. So personally I want
Okay.
to get out of the slave system, and because I think that healthy people actually don't want to be controlled. Like I think being a rebel is healthy, but I also think when you want to control everybody else and be a master, like that to me is like healthy people don't want to play those like they don't have the desire to control others, they
No.
want others to be free and be responsible
Yeah,
for themselves.
totally. You want to show them. that they have the tools within them. You want to show them that the power really lies within you to achieve great things in your life. And it's going to start with one tiny step of change. And it's really not that difficult when we decide to turn around and walk in a different direction. We just have to do it one tiny step at a time. It's so true. It is so true what you're saying there, you know. And this whole, absolutely, the whole, we're all enslaved in some way or the other. That is
We're all
so
enslaving
true.
each other like a giant
Yes,
Ouroboros. Like it's like that is what we're it's like a clock and we're all being a cog in it. Like it's like
exactly.
let's just all stop. But you can't like I said, nobody's purely a slave or master. We're all it all depends who the other person is you're interacting with. So it's like I think we all need to stop this and become self-responsible, autonomous, free will respecting beings that aren't trying to interfere with others' free will. I mean, but there's a line of like, when is somebody considered mentally ill, right? Like to me, somebody like Bonnie Blue, I'm like, okay, like out of the 1,000 men who stood there, just because somebody said you have permission, look how many men went and lined up to do that. And not one of them said, maybe this girl like needs a hug and like some help. Like, but you know what I mean? It's because she said, okay, you can violate me. They were like, oh, great. And so I think that's like another level of, okay, well, there's a higher moral thing to do in that situation. It's not all just about permission.
I find that so true what you said, because that was going to actually, you know, talking about that, I was going to say, if this girl screwed 1,000 guys on one day, firstly, I don't know how she did it. I mean,
Well, MK Ultra, right? Like they're trained to be able to do things that you are not
so
actually
true,
able to do
actually. Yeah,
physically. Yeah.
so true, actually. And as you say, out of 1,000 men, not one had the decency or the insight or the sensitivity to say, actually, all I want to do is hug you and give her a hug and say, I'm going home now, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, which self-respecting man would want to do that anyway? Where how many other dicks have been before you? I'm sorry, look, this is obviously adult content. I don't like to be crude, but you know what I'm saying. Some things you can't help. But I mean, seriously, but this whole OnlyFans culture. I don't know if you ever watch a podcast called the Whatever Podcast, and somehow that came onto my feed. And it's actually a young guy. Well, he must be in his 30s. And he interviews these young women, like a whole lot of them. And most of them are like porn stars or only stars fans and what have you, only fans or whatever. It is horrific to me to see the young women of today. And
Mm-hmm.
as you say, you know, let's never forget men and women are fundamentally different. Our DNA is different. A man in his DNA, it's in his DNA to be the provider, protector, hunter, gatherer, right? That's in his being. It's in a woman's DNA to create, procreate, be emotionally nurturing. That's who we are. Now, when you bring the two together, like two halves of a whole, they fit perfectly. Not one is higher than the other. It's like the orange and the juice and the orange. They're both important for the growth, right? Is that juice sweet or is it dry, right? So that's what I see with the whole male female psyche. Unfortunately, because the man, and we're living in the patriarchal age, I'm not blaming men. The whole patriarchy has said men are in dominance in our society and they control and they rule. We just got to look at that. And then you see how women have responded to that. So, this that we're seeing right now is a backlash of woman suppression, feminine suppression. But these young girls don't realize that when a woman really has sex with a partner, she's actually giving of her emotions. It's not normal for a woman just to screw around. We generally want to go for someone that we have an emotional connection with. That's why we get heartbroken so easily when we realize someone has used us for sex, right? In normal life. But this is now turned where these girls are now becoming the hunters. So they're going against their complete grain completely.
Mhm.
One girl was 21 years old. I'll never forget it. Had a body count of 341 guys at the age of 21, and she's proud of it. They love it. They think it's the way to go. They think it's this whole sexual liberation is what sets them free. And it's exactly what we're talking about. It's actually the bondage. Because in
Mhm.
later on in years, you're going to realize as a woman that is not your natural way to act like a man. You
Well,
know,
their brain's not developed anyways. They're gonna get time delayed PTSD when they can't section it
absolutely.
off when they're like 30, 40. They're gonna be laying
Exactly.
awake at night replaying every guy that they let violate them.
I mean, these girls have got boobs that have been operated in, whatever, jobs. They've already got plastic surgery. I mean,
Well, they're using AI so that they look like preteens even.
yeah, on
It's
the
a whole
thing.
thing, AI porn. It's we could do a whole nother show on porn. It's so bad. This it's like this is what I'm saying. I think we got to like get away from a lot of this. It's like because I think also there's something called a reaction formation, which is a psychological construct when again people don't want to be powerless. And to be honest, like the scariest thing to all humans is being powerless. And that's where
Yeah,
most trauma is some form of powerlessness and most abuse is some attempt at gaining power and control. Like it's all about powerlessness. So the mind will do weird things. So a reaction formation is when you actually feel powerless. So your mind will actually convince you that you want the thing that you already have and that you actually chose it. And so somebody who has been, sexually abused may become very promiscuous because they're like, oh no, I love this. Like it's like,
yeah,
you'll learn to love it. And the mind actually will do this. So when you see these women that are
exactly.
like, I just want to train a guy, like that's an actual psychological defense
Yeah,
mechanism in the mind. And you really see this on OnlyFans, like where the girls are going to like really extreme because they're almost having a competition of how much they can dissociate their own shame, like where it's like
right.
nothing. Like I think Bonnie Blue's friend was even going into retirement homes and like finding like old seniors. Like they were just trying to basically have a competition of like who could be the most like just not care, like have absolutely no dignity. Like that is kind of where it goes at some point, right? Yeah, I know it's
Are
bad. I
you?
could this show could go so bad, but like, and something else that really horrifies me is like Amazon, some of the stuff you can buy on there, like weird baby dolls with orifices fitted for doing vile things and like little child like dolls. And so like there's this kind of school of thought, where people are like, especially when it comes to the pedophilia or pedosadism, is like where they're saying, oh well, if the person could just go get a doll and use the doll instead, then like that would help heal them because they could reenact it on the doll and nobody gets hurt. And I think this is like a slippery slope because I've studied a lot of serial killers, right? And serial killers are kind of an extreme of, this S&M is like where you're actually going to like kill the girl, right? And that's what serial killers are reenacting, all of this stuff. They're different, but they're kind of the same, right? And so a lot of where this sadism comes from, it always starts in fantasy. It always starts in fantasy, and
Mm,
then it starts to, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of it in real life. I'm going to reenact a little bit of it, maybe on a doll, right? And then then they want the real thing. Then they want to up it. Then they want to take it to more extreme. Like, and so I think that like playing in the fantasy realm of things, to me, I think is just opening yourself to, again, like an addiction, right? Like it's like you're going to open yourself into tasting something that you're going to want more of because you're going to get desensitized to the level that you're playing
right.
with, right? So I personally think like, I personally don't agree with like the school of thought of what's being taught in counseling right now for people to go and like introduce themselves to this. And also like I think a lot of people aren't prepared for what they're getting into as well. I think they think they're going to have control, but it's all about pushing boundaries, right? And a lot of people that have been abused have issues with boundaries, and they might think they're going to be able to be in control. But like what I'm seeing right now is I think there's a lot of people going into BDSM that actually aren't into it. I think they're actually so desperate to be special or attention or extreme or to stand out from girl next door that they're like, oh no, I'm also a dominatrix and I'm also whatever, a furry, or whatever this extreme thing has to be just to stand out. Because even the giant boob job's not enough. Even, like it does, you're still not standing out. And so I think there's people, I think there's even, like these females that pretend to be bisexual just to make men happy and turn them on. Like it's not really them. It's not really their autonomy. It's not really, it's them pretending to be something in order to be desired by somebody else, which is again like a trauma reenactment.
And if we think about the young girls that are trained to be sex slaves and in the monarch programming and stuff, I mean, the first thing they realize, you speak to so many survivors, the first thing they realize is how happy it makes daddy or uncle or grandpa or whoever it is when you've sexually pleased them. So they realize very, very quickly that that's the way you get what you want. And then you would get a sweetie or a dolly or a sucker or something because you've been a good girl. So immediately that payoff starts. So exactly, and I would imagine it's true what you say, the dopamine, right? From, let's say, after a traumatic sexual experience, and to, okay, you were a good girl, have a sucker. Suddenly having that sweet sucker after that traumatic experience would immediately, because sugar we know is one of the greatest forms of things we're addicted to. I mean, there was a whole program actually on sugar a while ago, and how also, I think they 50s, 60s, they started putting up massive quantities of sugar in the ice creams and whatever, because that got us more addicted, and of course it disconnects us more. Sugar is not a good thing for
Yeah,
us
they
to be.
use it in MK Ultra too. Like even for storing memories, every time they would say, put the memory in this file and give them a little candy, and that would like
Exactly.
associate it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So it's like they use that as well. I mean, and that becomes their addiction. So sex and sugar, it's like teaching a dog how to do tricks. Every time he does a trick, you give him a treat, right? So it's exactly the same thing. Every time you use a little girl turned a trick, you got treated. And
Yeah.
then it, the false memory that sex is pleasant is
Well, and
exactly.
now it's the dopamine hit of money and hits
Yeah.
on OnlyFans or whatever. That's
Mhm.
their little that's their same hitting their same part in their brain, right? The other thing I wanted to go back to, what I mentioned at the beginning, was so we had the reaction formation, we had the somatic reenactment, which is sometimes when people have trauma, it can be conscious or unconscious trauma. But people who have post traumatic stress or dissociation, they often feel deadened or not alive, right? And actually, a lot of psychopaths feel that way because they've cut off their emotions and their conscience. And so, sadism actually is a form of watching somebody else have emotions. They can feel something that's externalized. So they're again trying to just sort of, or if you study serial killers, they'll say, I just wanted to feel something, right? And so
Yes.
a lot of people will go, even like veterans that have been in war zones and stuff, like they'll, when they get back, they go to a bar and want to be in a fight because it makes them feel alive again
Mm.
when their energy body kind of aligns into their physical body again. When they're in a danger state, they kind of they go hypervigilant, but they feel really alive, right? Like, I don't know if people have ever been in like a car accident or something, like you feel really alive like when
Yeah,
you're
adrenaline.
jacked, right? And so people are seeking that even through this BDSM stuff. They're doing a somatic reenactment, and it might even be something from their subconscious. They might not even know, their body may be drawn to reenact some form of abuse that they're not even conscious of. And again, And I don't like the kind of false belief that everybody who's been sexually abused is going to become an abuser just because abusers are often sexually
Yeah.
abused. Like it's
Yeah.
not the exact opposite, because most people abused don't become abusers. However, there is this drive for people that do go and abuse. That's also somatic reenactments where they're trying to normalize something by replicating it. And so, again, that's like a way just for them to master it, right? And so we kind of all do this in regular life. So there's something else called the repetition compulsion, which is Freudian. So like that's why we always go and date people that are going to activate our trauma, because we're subconsciously trying to get the person to be different so that we're not traumatized. But the trick to this, or the cosmic joke, whatever, is that we always pick somebody who can't. So you're going to go pick a narcissist that's supposed to attune to you when really it's probably going to be sadism instead of empathy, right? So
Right.
the whole trick of this is that it doesn't work, and we need to actually heal our own wound rather than
Trauma.
looking for someone else, because we'll always pick the person who can't to try and do it, and we drive ourselves nuts, right? And so a lot of this BDSM is also that.
Makes a lot of sense, absolutely. And yeah, we'll pick a person that's going to, what we think initially, fill up the gaps within us. And, the first 3 months of meeting someone is usually, or first 3 to 6 months, but especially the first 3 months. And maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. I'd like to hear your opinion anyway. Um, is like the honeymoon period. So that's when it's exciting. You sit up all night chatting, right? And you like really have this lovely connection. And that's when I found in my journey as a healer as well, that's when people often get themselves into the most trouble, because they're on that high, whether it's an adrenaline high, a drug high, an emotional high, and then they start engaging in things they often would not normally engage in. And before you
Right.
know it, zhoop, they sucked in. The addiction is
Yeah.
there already.
Yeah. So
And
imagine that with BDSM, what you could get sucked
yeah,
into, right?
absolutely. You kind of become, um, yeah, it's like made to look sexy. I mean, look at 50 Shades of Grey. It's made to look sexy. The beautiful virgin and the handsome, what is he,
Executive, or I can't remember, like some
executive, a
Wall Street
dom,
guy. I don't know.
whatever.
I didn't read the whole books.
Yeah. And suddenly, and no, it's true. They made it look, they made it seem very desirable. And I read, I think there were 3 or 4, but I really just want, from as a healer, that's why, as I said, it was the worst written book I've ever read, or books.
Yeah, I read the first chapter and I said, I think I could do without putting this
Yeah.
into my
But
consciousness.
I wanted to see where the story went, But at the end, it does come out where he was, okay, they don't talk about SRA or anything, but he was molested by an older woman or something like that when he was a kid. They make it quite mild. Uh,
Right.
you
So
know,
when you minimize your trauma, that's what makes you be able to do it to somebody else. That happens with pedophilia too. They start normalizing what happened to them and then repeat it.
right. There you have it. And then of course that was him, that was his journey into, and then of course she falls pregnant and then he stops.
Yeah,
That's
right.
according.
Right.
That was the
Um,
book, yeah. So she had that old baby or something like that, or I can't remember, the baby was born, but there was a baby at the end, and that calms him down. She heals him basically. Basically, what they're saying at the end is that it was her love that healed him. I believe that. I believe when a woman is in her power, I always say to my clients and students as well, really, when we talk about this, as a woman, we need to show our men how to become emotional beings. Men are generally very scared of emotion, right? So they'll shut down. Women as well, but they become involved in that entangled pain body and get dramatic and witchcrafty and manipulative and stuff like that. But when a woman is in her strength and she can remain calm in trying times, that is often the thing that will bring her man, or a male, back to himself as well. Love, of course. But again, it's a fine line. Me as a healer,
well,
oh God, did I not try and fix them all?
That's your repetition compulsion. And like the thing is, and I'm guilty as charged as well, but like the thing is, we need to learn that that actually doesn't work on psychopaths and sadists, and that they love getting you to try. That is S&M, is that you trying to love that, compensate for their love. So yeah, it's a line on that as well. Something I just wanted to make sure we addressed, it kind of related to what Chris was talking about with the bonding and the closeness and the trauma bonding. And so this kind of ties into what you just said too about this trauma bonding, which is, I don't know if everybody really has the same definition of that word. It gets thrown around a lot. And so when you're talking about narcissistic abuse, there's something called trauma bonding, which is, again, it's an addiction like a drug. And so trauma bonding happens from hot and cold, right? And so it's very similar to the experiment they did with pigeons, where they could go and push a lever and get a pellet. And if the pellet came out every time, they would relax and only go and hit the lever when they were hungry. However, when they had what was called intermittent reinforcement, which means sometimes there was a pellet and sometimes there wasn't, and there was no rhyme or reason. So again, that powerlessness to control, like it's random, like playing a lottery machine, that leads to compulsion and anxiety. And so they would keep hitting the lever for pellets even when they weren't hungry. And so that's kind of what happens with a sadist or a narcissist when like you said, you start dating them and it's all great and it's a honeymoon and everything, and then all of a sudden they're just vicious to you, and then you start to feel confused in your mind, and then you think if you act differently and you're more loving or you're more serving, that it's going to overcompensate, and that your love's going to, like, rock paper scissors their psychosis. That leads you to be more compulsive, and then you get a little hit back when they're nice to you or thankful, and that feels like
Breadcrumbing.
heroin. Yeah, that feels like heroin to you. So then you're like gonna keep trying
Exactly.
harder. And a good slave master knows this, right? And not just people in BDSM, but this is like men who know how to play a lot of women online and make sure that all the girls are super jealous. Like they know exactly enough how to treat the women like crap to activate this kind of anxious attachment trauma bonding in women, where the women are more compulsively obsessed with them, right? And like there's these kind of player guys that really understand the art of doing this to women, which is really hot and cold, that's not related to the woman's behavior at all. So like the woman can be the same and nice, and sometimes the guy will be a jerk and sometimes he'll be nice, but it's like not in direct relationship to responding to the woman. It's like random, intermittent. And they know if they do this, they'll have a bunch of women fighting over them being jealous, right? Like it's like these men know this. And it's kind of sad because they believe that jealous, like where the woman's obsessed and can't live without you and like wants to start, they like to the male ego, that feels like way more than just a nice girl respecting you as a partner. Like it's that crazy desire for heroin, right?
Yeah.
Men interpret that as love, but it's actually not love. It's just a trauma response in women. And when women start to overcome it, they're like, I can't believe I even felt that way about that guy, but it was just something in their brain, right? It's not real love.
Right.
And so in this BDSM stuff, when they're creating this trauma bonding, they're kind of creating like a Stockholm syndrome, right? And that
Right.
when the girl's like desperate to be, pleasing and all this, like it's like that to the master feels like ultimate love. It's not really love though. It's like a forced synthetic kind of fake
Yes.
heroin, you know what I mean? It's like and so that's kind of what they're creating. However, it feels really intense. And so that it's, I'm not saying it's not real. You know what I mean? Like anybody that's been through MK Ultra, like the attachment bonding and the Stockholm syndrome is like 101. None of the other programming is even going to work if they don't have that attachment to the abusers, right? So I think in the that close bonding that happens in these situations, that's really it's a synthetic kind of a Stockholm syndrome that's not really real, right?
Totally.
And I just wanted to mention, I read the book The New Satanist by Linda Blood, who was a person who ended up having an affair with Michael Aquino, like in, I don't know, the 90s, because she had met him through writing this magazine or something. And she ended up meeting him in real life. And he is like a complete narcissist, sadist, like, obviously, right? But she met him kind of like before anything was exposed about him. And she met him in real life, and he was kind of running this game on her. And she said that he used to watch the movie The Omen with Damien in it. And there would be these kind of like, and I haven't watched the movie, but she mentioned it in the book that he was saying like, oh, that Stockholm syndrome is the pinnacle of love, right? Is when you're torturing somebody. And like, so like a person like Michael Aquino knows this, right? Like they know that's the most intense, is to make somebody just desperate for even a shred of affection from you, right? It's a good book. You can read it. The New Satanist by Linda Blood. It's online. You can download it. I don't know if it's famous, but it's definitely worth a read because she tried to out him way before even the internet.
What was her experience with him, just as a matter of interest? I'll definitely
He
check
was
it
just
out.
a complete abusive narcissist who was basically trying to drag her in, to this kind of dark relationship. And I think he was trying to get her involved in other stuff. And then she was like realizing how serious it was, you know what I mean? And then she got out of it because she realized like this guy's actually a really sick guy. Like she, you know what I mean? I think she was drawn to it a little bit, and then she started to see, and then she actually wrote the book to try and warn people like this guy is for real, like don't, and I
Yeah.
think that her book never got famous or anything. It was before the internet. It's worth a read though. You can get it for free. Highly recommend
Well,
it.
that's a good one, guys. I'm going to check it out. The New Satanist by Linda Blood. I really think, and I mean, there's a reason why I'm sure he probably put a hexy schmexy thing on her book so that it didn't get very far. But time for that is over now. So, The New Satanist by Linda Blood. I think, again, this is just us shedding light on these atrocious acts that have been going on since forever. And the more of us who know what's been going on, it's how we support our survivors as well. It's how we support the survivors to support their stories, believe them. There's nothing more. I mean, you would know, Jaymee, when you dealing with people who've had these kind of horrific experiences in life, and they
Another
they're crazy.
another movie which I don't like watching really horrible stuff, and I somebody made me watch this movie, but it's actually a really good movie if you want to understand this kind of Stockholm syndrome and the way that torture works. It's the Poughkeepsie tapes, which I think was a movie that was kind of based on some real life serial killer stuff, but the movie's kind of taped in the way like it looks like a home video, like the Blair Witch or whatever. But he kind of shows this girl he kidnaps and how he starts using stuff to make her have. And in the end, she has like such bad Stockholm syndrome. It's not a nice movie. I mean, don't watch it if you don't like, trigger
What's it
warning. But
called?
the Poughkeepsie tapes, it really shows the psychology of you know
How
and
do I spell
like
Poughkeepsie?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm
No idea.
gonna
You'll
Poughkeepsie.
find it if you Google around. And I
Yeah.
think the S&M stuff, like again, there's a veneer, like there's kind of the front veneer, which is 50 Shades of Grey, or like if you even go back to the old Marilyn Monroe movies, like where they had the women as furniture and chandeliers and stuff, like they were already kind of doing that stuff with like they were kind of normalizing this MK Ultra, which Sean McCann could, if you have him on your show, he can tell you all about the Marilyn Monroe furniture. He's researched all that and he could explain it way better than me. But they were already kind of doing that back then, like having photographs of women like in bondage as chandeliers, and like they, you know what I mean. It was pretty risque for back then. So there's kind of that front veneer, the 50 Shades of Grey. It's going to be your mom or the housewife reading that. Your kid's fifth grade teacher has it. Like they're just trying to like normalize it. And then there's kind of this, consent culture where it's just kind of like, part of the normal sexuality, where it's just people respecting consent and playing games and like cosplay, that kind of stuff, where it's like not seen as anything that serious. And then like even Chris explained in the show, like, no, like some people take it so far where even he said like it's happened crazy, like right, like you know what I mean, like, so that's kind of more the real stuff, right? Which is going darker and darker, where like whatever people are imagining in their mind right now, it's like not even close to where this stuff can actually go. Okay, like
Yeah.
with the level of
Absolutely.
degradation, and you know what I mean. And then there's the real stuff, which is actual people. Like we did a show, me and Kat Waters did a show on Colleen Stan, who was the girl in the box where she was kept under a bed for 7 years by somebody, and he was involved in a backdoor magazine kind of thing where people were like had these secret books you could order in the mail about how to make a sex slave and stuff, right? And so that's the real BDSM, is actually having an actual real slave, an actual, you know what I mean, like. So I think this kind of veneer where polygamy, just, you know, putting on a little suit and playing with their husband at a swing club. Like, yeah, sure, that exists, but then you have to understand like where this stuff actually goes to where it's like underground facilities of MK Ultra where people are brought down people to torture and do what they want with them. So, I
Yeah.
mean, personally, I
Snuff.
think like I don't need to be a part
Yeah.
of that, you know, personally.
There's definitely, I know that it turns into snuff,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
extreme.
And the
I mean,
and
and
pedofilism.
literally, I mean, body parts being drilled into, um, I won't go, I won't say too much on that. I mean, that is like crazy though, because that's what Chris was saying as well. I mean, BDSM, there's so many different aspects of it, you know, and at the end of the day, it's about extremes and it's about sex and pain and the culmination of, I guess, the sex magic that they were brought up with and dissociation through
And
pain
inversion.
and
It's
inversion.
inversion. And like I can't remember. I've read so many books that I feel bad because I don't always give proper credit because the books just all blend together in my mind because I've read so many. But I did read in one survivor of MK Ultra's books that she said they were taking like a certain percentage of people out of the general public, like even like around the age of 3, and just doing like some kind of programming with like just basic electro showing stuff in the brain, like just basically pairing stuff. Um, and she said they did that kind of as a mass thing to see where it would play out in 20 years because they like doing these longitudinal studies, right, with MK Ultra. And so they were basically creating a market for this by doing kind of a certain percentage of MK Ultra on unwitting subjects and then waiting 20 years to see if this plays out in popular culture. And so to me, that's just like I'm seeing that. And when I see all these furries and people that want to be dogs and you know, a lot of this, like to me, I'm like, this is an MK Ultra that they're actually did a kind of a funny version of it to make it seem harmless. But why would like all of a sudden a whole bunch of people be into pretending they're a stuffed dog or like it's like, and there's
Exactly.
a whole bunch of them. That's MK Ultra. That's not an individual doing that of their own free will. It's a cohort of people that have the same program that was activated to express
I
itself
agree.
on a timestamp, and they're testing it out in something that seems innocuous so that they can watch it and nobody picks up on what it really is.
I totally agree with you on that, most definitely. I think that this has been an ongoing program for many years, and what's happening now is the sleepers, if you will, are starting to wake up. They're being activated. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
say one more thing before we but like so this people probably know who Rocco is. That was he did a whole bunch of porn and his pornography was like really reptilian. It was like attacking the women, hurting the women, sodomizing the women. Like it's like it's a genre of pornography that like he's this Italian guy. He's pretty famous. Like I'm sure a lot of people know who he is. And there's actually a documentary about him on Netflix, which is really horrifying to watch, like what they would actually put on Netflix, like really graphic scenes that any kid could watch after school. Like I was just horrified this was actually on Netflix, but I ended up watching it for sociological research to see. But when I watched that, I'm like, he's actually using MK Ultra techniques on the women. Like he's hurting them in a certain way, and then you can literally see them switch into an altar to take pain. Like, and he knows what he's doing. Like he's got these women, and then afterwards he comes in and he says, oh, are you okay? Like, you know, you've been doing anal all week. Like, how are you feeling? And it really acts like he's caring about them. And then these girls are lining up because it's kind of this rite of passage to be violated by this Rocco guy, right? And I'm like, this is so insane to me. But for anybody that watches that documentary, if you study MK Ultra, it's actually really obvious, like what he's doing. Like he's very much he's using techniques that they're just showing you right on Netflix. You know what I mean? And like, you know, I don't know. I just think he's a really good example people can look at too, because it's like there's nothing in this for the women. It's just a rite of passage for them to be abused. And I think there's like I think that's the thing that's happening right now. And I just think as all women, like I don't want to be a part of that personally. You know.
No, I definitely don't either. No, I'd rather be the part of the wave of change when it comes to that kind of.
Yeah, and I don't think these girls on OnlyFans realize like some of the women that fought before them for respect and rights, and you know what I mean? And then just this kind of wave of young girls is coming
Insane.
out that's like, oh, what's the big deal, right? But like, I think I mean, I've worked with a lot of clients that have worked in the sex industry and stuff, and it actually doesn't affect them at the time. They just completely compartmentalize it. But later, when their mind, like when they kind of
Yeah.
come into like the second puberty on their mind, like they really are haunted by stuff, and it's like a time delayed post-traumatic stress, like where you know what I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just waiting for them to all come back. Like I think about somebody like Bonnie Blue, because I think she's only 20, like she's under 30, and I just keep thinking like, where's this woman going to be when she turns 40? Because like that she's going to have like 1,000 guys coming to her in her dreams, and you know what I mean. I think there's always this illusion of it being harmless at the time.
Babe, she's gonna need a vagina transplant.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, she got actually, there was, I don't know, I didn't watch it all, but yeah, this is what I mean about this fake stuff that they show too, that people are watching thinking this is not actually causing physical damage. And this applies to the BDSM stuff too, like where it's like, no, you guys, this is not a joke. Like it
Yeah,
might look
exactly.
okay on this video you're watching, but like that is not how this is going to be in real life. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people that if you watch these interviews, I think it was the King.com documentary, like of these women after saying like, you know what I mean? I have a colposcopy bag now. I have, you know, like this is the reality. It's not what you see on the screen of somebody putting themselves through these things.
Wow, what a conversation, and I'm so happy to have had it with you. I think definitely the more I have, chat to people like yourself, and the more I've learned, everything I've learned so far about this, and the more I learn. And it's so true. We are just in this great big fat matrix, and in this master and slave system. There is no, I mean, we talk about the black-white slavery, really. That's really just the cover up for a much greater evil that exists. Complete sadomasochism, complete
Mm-hmm.
master slavery, and really, we the ones that get to say no. And we have to say no if we choose to be sovereign, free, and yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of the balance, because we see this like slave system and the freedom, and like this could be in biblical terms as well, right? Or like good and evil terms. Like it's like there's a slavery and there's freedom and there's morality and there's, you know, immorality, and but yet we all have free will, and even God doesn't interfere with free will. He respects free will. He gave us free will. So this
yeah,
is the game: is that we have free will, but we also have a master slave system, and so and again, there's group karma, and this is why the occultists are always have the 51%, because once 51 is the number where something becomes not the other thing anymore. And so we all have autonomy as individuals, but then we also all affect each other as a group, and but we also have
absolutely.
to respect free will. So it's like, does somebody have the right to be a willing slave? Well, where's the line where it's bringing slavery on everybody, because there's a lineup of people being willing to be slaves. And so I feel like people like you and me and everybody who's trying to affect consciousness and speak to people, is like we're trying to bring up the people that yes, maybe they technically have a legal right to go and abuse themselves because it's their body and their free will and their choice, but because it's bringing the whole collective into a slave system, like we have certain people that are trying to like help reach the consciousness of those people and say, how about you don't be a slave? How about you don't be a masochist? How about you come up? Because then we all get to come up and we all get to come out of the slave system. And like that's the people we need to reach, because we can't keep it separate anymore, where we're like, well, just let them do the OnlyFans, because like it affects all of us. So we need to reach those people, you know what I mean, in a way where we're like getting them to use their autonomy for something better, which is not slavery, in my opinion.
The only way I think people are going to do that is when they realize that they don't need to be dependent on somebody else for money, compliments, um, self-esteem, anything. We realize, and I mean, and that, one thing I'd like to say to those young women is the greatest sexual liberation is actually celibacy. And I'm not saying that you've now got to all go celibate, but there's something to be said about Eastern teachings, for example, when there's the monks choose to be celibate and stuff like that. And yes, 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 I know, not all, yes, I know, everyone has dodgy people involved. But there's something about that cosmic orgasm, if you will. So instead of like the ejaculation that you would in normal sexual contact, it becomes something that you contain within. And it becomes like that spiritual, I don't want to say orgasm because that sounds wrong, but I think you understand what I'm saying, right? So it's a spiritual enlightenment, it's a spiritual blissing up when you choose to actually use that energy that you were expending externally and you choose to give it to yourself. It's not a sexual energy. It is a nurturing energy. It is an energy that brings you joy. It starts showing you your true power, who you are. And true power is not something that you can break in someone else, right? It's something that is it's true power is humility, kindness, compassion, empathy. That's true power. And we
Mhm.
start building that up within us. You start showing yourself those qualities. You start being gentle and loving towards yourself. Life starts changing. Suddenly you get a new job. Suddenly you meet a nice person that doesn't want to. I could use a lot of examples now, but I won't.
Yeah.
Stick you up the bum.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I
something
think,
like,
yeah, I think it just, again, what you said at the beginning of the podcast about extremes, right? Like, it's like, I don't think people want to, I mean, well, we know what the end of this is. And it's, I think it maybe be another show, but like there's a real, and I know you'd be a good person to have a conversation with, is like this, the actual spiritual, energetic, occult aspects of this, because I think a lot of this gets sold as just physical and visceral, and yeah, they get a little bit of the psychological or emotional, but they don't understand the actual like energy transfer, the psychic energy connected to the sexual energy. Like this is getting into William Reich stuff and like all this. Like I think a lot of people that go and get involved in this stuff are not educated spiritually and esoterically to really understand like even things in the realm of tantra, like to actually go into some club and like realize actually what's going on multi dimensions in that space. You know what I mean? Like it's so much broader than I think what people are focusing on in some of these
yeah.
places. Like I think that'd probably just be like a whole nother conversation, but it's so much darker. I think I did a show on sex magic or something. I could put it in the links, but where I kind of went over some of this stuff, like even with the pornography, like even if you're not going in and participating in it, if you're taking it into yourself and watching it, like on a quantum level, this because everything's recorded now, like um we're being holders of this frequency of
Right.
these, like taking this into yourself. And also when you're even just watching something on a screen and not participating, you're still in that programmable space, like you're still in a subspace
Exactly.
even if you're at home, doing your own
Exactly.
thing. I don't think people are not educated on this at all. This is not what you learn in sex education in school. Like the actual spiritual, psychic, emotional aspects of this
Mhm.
is way deeper than the actual physical, pain, playing with pain.
Well, this is why people become addicted to it. It's because of the emotional, spiritual, psychological, invisible aspects, right? People can't understand addictions. And no matter what your addiction is, it's always coming from emotional, energetic, spiritual. And when you can get that, when you understand that, it dissolves the addiction physically. Anyway. Wow. Jamie, that is really interesting, and I think we will definitely have a show like that um, following up for this one as well. And I want to just say thank you so, so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your research with us on these really important topics. So thank you. Is there anything else you would maybe like to just say to us in ending,
um
wrap up
I
with?
just
And
sorry, I just had one book that I read a long time ago. Actually, there might be a better book out now, but I think it was called Screw the Roses, Bring Me the Thorns, or something like that. And it's a book on BDSM, and it's like an old classic book. I mean, it's like, I don't know, I read it like 15 years ago, but it really explains this kind of stuff, like the actual psychology of the subspace and like what people are actually doing with it. So I just wanted to recommend that book to people, like if they want to, you know, look at the actual psychology side of it. It's a really good book. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for giving me a platform. I'm just so happy to have an ear to be able to say this stuff. I don't think the way that I look at this stuff is mainstream culture. So like, again, it's just my take on stuff, and people can agree or disagree, but I just hope I gave people something to sort of maybe think about the other side of it, because there's just this kind of cultural programming right now to normalize this, but I don't know if people always question what the agenda of that is. So I hope people consider like what I'm saying in addition to whatever other information they want to take in about this topic.
Well, I have to say, I for one 100% agree with everything I've heard you say thus far, because I fully agree that it's exactly, you know, this matrix we're in is the, you know, the matrix of reincarnation. And we're going to reincarnate into this matrix until we get it, until we no longer are stuck in the master slave, slave master psyche. When we learn that we are in essence sovereign, we are free, we are beautiful, strong, connected human beings. And all we have to do is go within and rediscover that beautiful little thread that connects us to the divine or God. And that's kind of like, I always call it my hotline to heaven. Then you hear your creator, God's voice all the time in thoughts, intuitions. It's beautiful. Jaymee, thank you so, so much. And I want to say again, thank you to all our viewers for listening. I know we certainly broaching on topics we haven't broached before, and I'm loving it because this is life. This is actually the truth of what we need to hear. All this behind closed doors, bedroom bollocks, we've got to open up and open those doors, and we've got to let the world know what is actually going on, like the survivors have been speaking to us. It cannot be easy to be a survivor sharing those stories publicly, that's for sure. So, you know, I just think we should listen to these stories, give someone, you know, if we suspect anything, just be kind, be gracious, be graceful, you know, give people grace. In fact, just I was at an art exhibition last night, and at least 3 of the exhibitors were SRA'd. And I would not have known that unless I'd seen certain art and understood certain. Oh, my heart just breaks when I think about that again, because the one was so torn. I wish I knew who that person was. They signed anonymous. They wouldn't sign their thing. But it was just to see, you know, that that's how they're expressing, and only because I've been on this platform for a couple of years can I see it now. My friend was saying, like, why would they paint that? I'm going, babe, that's SRA. That's one of the altars. That's not necessarily an altar, but it's one of the entities that has sex with them while they
Well, yeah,
obviously.
and that's another healthy way that people can process their trauma is art. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of other alternatives, you know, dance, art, like
Absolutely.
there's stuff
Yeah.
that does not have to be master and slave.
That
You know?
That's the one thing I wanted to say to you. You know, I actually missed my word. It was channel that energy differently. You know, it's all energy. You know, it's all energy. And unfortunately, so many survivors have only known pain throughout their life from a very young age. You have not known love, compassion, safety, security, a father that puts his arm around you and says, if that boy comes near you again, I'm gonna box his ears. You know, that kind of thing. You know, that feeling of security. They've never had that. And I understand it's a very difficult feeling to get if you've never had it. I can't imagine not having it, but I can imagine it must be god awful not to have it. So yeah, it's just a moment of let's do this together. We're all sharing, we're
Yeah.
talking,
And one of the
and
best ways to process trauma is to help somebody else. And that doesn't mean everybody has to go be a counselor or work with kids, or, you know what I mean? Like, people have but like going and putting your energy towards ameliorating something that represents your trauma in somebody else more vulnerable or more powerless, like that actually is the most healing thing that somebody can do, in my opinion.
fully share, talk, draw, process, cry, beat pillows if you need to. Um, Journal, definitely journal is one of the best ways to get things out there. Jaymee, thank you. God bless you. Take good care. And
Thank you.
everybody,
Thanks, everybody.
yeah, such a pleasure to have you. Thanks, guys. Take care, and we'll see you the next time. Okay, bye.